So that passenger reported me for every issue possible, therefore getting me kicked out of the program immediately. In 2005, if you wanted a taxi in New York City, it was going to be challenging, especially if you look like me. The driver wouldn't even stop to pick you up. And even when you managed to get one, they would drive like maniacs. They would just run the meter on you by driving around a few blocks. And then they would make sure that they harass you once they drop you off for extra tips. So that was really a disservice to many people who needed a good way of transportation at a good price around the city. And that's probably why around 5 years later, a few companies emerged with rideshare services and trying to address those issues that passengers were dealing with. So the first thing they made sure of was that drivers would be held accountable for their actions. So a passenger could rate and report any incidents related to the driver who took them to their destination. And a few companies that started, I think, was Uber, Lyft, Juno, Sidecar. But I think the last two companies went bankrupt anyways. So with the available technology, a passenger could report in real time what happened in the vehicle, report incidents, rate the driver, and if need be, contact authorities if something really crazy happened. When I started driving, to me it was easy to just drive from point A to point B without bothering anyone. And I never really worried about all those rules and reporting tools that users could use against the drivers. But then sometimes in 2018, I happened to start picking up pool riders. And what a pool rider is somebody who doesn't want to pay the full price of the ride and is willing to share the car with other people who go the same way. And in that situation, you can have up to 4 people in your vehicle, and those passengers don't even know each other. They just go the same direction. And when I started, I picked up 2 females in the vehicle, and I still had a third person to pick up somewhere in Brooklyn. So as I arrived at the third pickup point, there was a guy standing in front of his house with luggage. So he approached the car, and since it was really dark, he didn't know there were people in the back seat. So he opened the rear door and saw the 2 females sitting there. But instead of shutting the door, he kept the door open and started talking to me about his luggage and how he was planning on going to the airport. And I didn't really like the way he handled himself, because nobody wants to be sitting in the back seat with somebody opening the rear door and talking in your face. So I told him, I said, "Sir, you need to shut the door." But he kind of ignored me and then signaled his friend in front of the house to bring the luggage to the car. And I said it again. I said, "Sir, you need to shut the door first, then you talk to me." And apparently he didn't like the way I spoke to him. So he slammed the door, and then he went and got his luggage and put them back in the trunk. And then he came to the front passenger seat, and then he slammed that door. But I didn't want to argue with him because I have more to lose than he does. So I just remained silent and I started driving. And everything went well after that. I dropped off the 2 females, and then I dropped him off at the airport. I even helped him take his luggage out of the car. So I turned around and started driving back to the city. But then I realized that my application was offline. So I tried several times to go online, but it didn't work. And there was a message on the screen saying that my account was not active. So as I'm driving, I called the company to ask them what's the deal with me not being able to go online. And the lady looks through my account, and she tells me that I received an email regarding the reason why I was deactivated. And I'm like, "Deactivated? What happened?" She said, "Just read the email." I said, "Well, I'm on the highway. I can't really read an email while I'm driving on the highway." She said, "Well, I can't tell you any more about this. You will have to read that email." I said, "All right." So I pulled over somewhere, and then I started reading the email. But as I started reading it, I couldn't believe what was said in that email, because they basically lectured me. So the email basically said that I was driving while being intoxicated, and they deactivated me because they could not tolerate the use or abuse of substances while driving for them. So I'm done reading the email, and I'm like, is that a fucking joke? I mean, I haven't been drinking for the last 8 months. Now I get this report about intoxication attached to my name, and I have no idea where it came from. So I called him back, and at this point I really sounded like I was intoxicated, because this poor lady was trying to explain to me what the situation was, and I wouldn't listen. I was just cursing and yelling at her. And at some point I told them that, "Hey, if someone told you that I was intoxicated, I believe the first thing you should have done was contact me, and then at least order me to stop the vehicle, because if I'm intoxicated, I'm a danger to other people and to myself. And then I would have to wait for some authorities to come and check me out. But if you kick me off of the program like this and you don't even try to investigate the matter, like, to me, it doesn't make sense. And she said, well, we're just going to investigate on our end and then we'll get back to you. I'm like, how the hell are you going to investigate that matter if you don't have access to my blood, my urine, or my breath? This is ridiculous. Maybe I should help you by going to a precinct, get tested by some officers, and then they will send you the results directly. Maybe that would settle the matter. She said, well, we don't do it here. We're just going to investigate on our end and we don't need you to do anything. I said, I'm on my way to the precinct anyways, because I will still get tested and send you the result, because I don't really want any report involving substance abuse with my name on it. So I went to the first precinct I could find and I asked to speak to an officer. And a few minutes later, an officer came outside and asked me what I wanted. And I explained to him what happened, that I was getting reported for being intoxicated behind the wheels. And I was even getting kicked out of the program. So he asked me, how long ago did it happen? I said, well, it happened like 20, 30 minutes ago. He said, well, you don't look intoxicated to me. So apparently you're dealing with some CYA tactics. I was like, what is a CYA tactic? He said, a CYA tactic is cover your ass, used by a lot of big companies. And he explained to me that the reason why they kicked me out after the report came out was because if I was really intoxicated and a passenger reported me for being so, they would immediately kick me out of the program to distance themselves from me. So let's say they kick me out at 9 p.m. And let's say at 9:17 p.m. I drove faster than I was supposed to and hit 2 pedestrians and killed 1. No one could really sue them, because at 9:17 they could argue that at the moment of the accident they were not associated with me anymore, and that's all they cared about. So the officer explained this to me in a very lengthy situation, and I was like, this is really messed up, because if I was really intoxicated, they didn't really care that I killed myself or killed a passenger or killed anyone else. They would just stay away from the situation to make sure that nobody could sue them. He also told me that the police didn't have the right to draw my blood or test me for anything, because there was no crime committed there. And my only option was just to go home and wait it out. After I arrived home, I seriously considered stop driving, because to me it was really unfair and abusive for anyone to be able to send out a report and have somebody deactivated for 3 days. And of course, 3 days later, I received an email telling me that the investigation was completed and everything was back online. They didn't find anything wrong. And I was like, this gotta be the most idiotic company I've ever dealt with. Because let's say I was really intoxicated. They had no access to my breath, blood, or urine, and they just determined that everything was good and they put me back online. What if I was really drunk? So they potentially put the drunk driver back on the road. And I even said it in an email that I sent back to them. And I said, well, thank you for putting me back online, but what if I was really drunk? Would you want somebody like me back on the road? But of course, they never answered, and I tried to forget about the whole issue. During those 3 days, I didn't really have much to do except for homework and a few errands to run. So I had enough time to go into my application and check and see if I had some other complaints about me. And that's when I realized that that same night, I had multiple reports. When passengers leave your vehicle, they can rate you from 1 to 5. But then they also have access to a list of issues they can report on you. And it goes from speeding, sudden stops, reckless driving, unprofessional behavior. And of course, there are more serious issues that could draw attention from the company, which are intoxicated behind the wheels, or something even more serious involving violence or sexual harassment. So that passenger reported me for every issue possible, therefore getting me kicked out of the program immediately, and I had no way of proving my innocence. And he even reported me for an accident that didn't happen. He reported me for for traffic violations that didn't happen. And the system allowed him to do that. And that's why I don't really think that's his fault, because I don't think he really thought about what he was touching. He just selected every issue possible because he knew it was going to hurt me. And to be honest with you, I'm not really mad at the guy, because I've been in this country long enough to understand that there are too many people who aren't happy. And the only thing they can do with their time and energy is not to try to find out what makes them happy, but they use it to try to make other people unhappy. They try to make other people feel miserable. So maybe it's going to make them feel a little bit better about themselves. So I blame the system more because it shouldn't be normal for anyone to just, even by mistake, select an option that reports a certain issue and have somebody deactivate it for 3 days with no recourse for them to just prove that the report was false. It doesn't make sense for passengers to realize that the driver is drunk and still remain in the vehicle all the way to his destination before they ever say anything to the company. And that to me was the perfect reason for me to stop going the extra mile to please passengers, because no matter what you do, you will never be able to keep those 5 stars. It's not going to happen. It's never going to happen, no matter how nice you are, no matter how good of a person you are. Somebody somewhere is going to give you a bad rating and is going to report you for something that didn't happen.